world, it's Keely and I'm back for another video. This is going to be my Q1 book wrap up. I figured for right now, while I'm not finishing necessarily a ton of books, I would do quarterly wrap ups, but if it starts to get a little bit out of control, I'll break it up into months then. I don't have a specific number of books that I would like to finish in 2025. It's more of just I want to enjoy the books that I'm reading and feel very comforted by reading this year instead of putting a bunch of requirements and pressure on myself to meet certain goals. I'm definitely focusing on quality of experience with books this year over quantity. When I am in like a reading mood, I do tend to finish more books, obviously, but I'm also going to try to just like enjoy the process. From January until the end of March, I believe I finished 9 books. I figured I would just go through them with you. I have my story graph pulled up. That is where I keep track of all of the books that I am reading and finishing. I don't do anything fancy with story graph. I don't really do number rating, like star ratings. I don't type up a review or anything like that. It's really just I use story graph to track the month that I read a book, like when I started it, when I finished it, and then all of the books that I am currently reading. The first book that I finished in January of this year, I finished it on January 4th, so I actually started it in December, but I finished it in January. I'm counting it for 2025. This one is a book from my library, and it's called The Princes in the Tower by Philippa Langley. And this one was a nonfiction history book where Philippa was going through all of the documents that we have, all the historical context for the princes in the tower. Let me pull up the actual link for the book because I cannot remember the names of them. Yeah, in the summer of 1483, Edward V, who was 12, and his little brother, Richard, Duke of York, who were 9, were kept in the Tower of London and they disappeared. And there have been lots of different theories and rumors over the years of the outcome, like what actually happened to those 2 boys. Everyone that does research into it comes up with their own idea. Lots of people believe that they died in the tower, that they were murdered by their uncle, who was king or like about to be king or something, because their dad was originally king, and then I think when he died it was supposed to pass to the boys, but it went to the uncle. I can't remember exactly. I get so confused trying to keep track of everyone in history like that. But there's rumors that they were murdered, there's rumors that they escaped, there's rumors that they just got old and died there. Philippa pulled up all of the existing research and then also potentially identified additional resources and documents that people hadn't uncovered or looked at. And she, spoiler, she very much believes that the boys escaped and that one of them was, oh my gosh, what was his name? It was like Porton Warbeck or something like that. I will put the actual name like here. But it was something like Warbeck or something that a lot of historians believe was an imposter that came out and said, hey, I am actually one of the boys. As an adult, I just changed my name to live. I believe she thinks that was actually one of the boys. And so it was just a really interesting book to read because she very much is like, this is what happened. But a lot of people are like, we don't know that for sure. So I enjoyed the process of reading her experience of looking at the historical context and then trying to come up with a new theory or find more supporting documents to support her idea that the boys survived. The second book that I read, I finished on January 14th. This one was Oathbreakers, The War of Brothers That Shattered an Empire and Made Medieval Europe by Matthew Gabriele and David M. Perry. This was their newest book. They do have another book, I think it's called The Bright Ages, which is also on my shelves. They're medieval historians, and Oathbreakers was about the Frank people. And so it talks a lot about the Franks, the Carolingians, and, why am I forgetting his name? Charlemagne? Something? Was it Charlemagne? Yes, it was Charlemagne who led the Franks. And so this was looking at I forget the time period of this, but this was like a heckin' old medieval story. But it was very entertaining. I really enjoyed it. Same with any time that I try to read historical stuff from European history. I struggle with keeping track of who everyone is because everyone has such similar friggin' names at that point that it's just hard to be like, this person was the son of this person who was the cousin of this person who then became king, and then this person. They all have the same name. It's very confusing, and since it's not something I actively research all year long, every year, it's more of like a couple months out of the year I get really into it. It's just hard to keep track of. But I wanted to read this new book because I was seeing a lot of hype for it in the medieval historian world. Yeah, I'm really happy that I read it. It was super good. I have obviously their other book then. It's somewhere on my shelf, The Bright Ages. That was their first book, and I would definitely like to read that one. Then I finished a third book in January. I finished this one on January 20th, and this was another Philippa Langley. This one was called The Lost King, The Search for Richard III, and I enjoyed The Lost King way more than The Princess in the Tower. So The Lost King I had heard about when it happened, but I never looked into it. So as I was reading this book, I was like, oh, I remember seeing that in the news. Philippa decided that she knew where Richard III was buried. And that's been something that a lot of people have theorized over the years, and there's been a lot of different ideas about where he could have been buried. But Philippa was pretty convinced that he was underneath a car park, and she ended up campaigning to get all of the finances that would be required to dig up a car park. And it was part of like a social services lot, like a social services building. So there are people coming in every day to work and they need a place to park. And she was like, well, actually, I want to dig up this lot. So can we move everyone? And so this book really focused on her story of getting to the point where she believed that she explains it as like she's walking across this car park and then gets like chills when she's standing over the area where she believed that he was buried. And then it just like kicks off from there of all of the meetings that she had to have and all of the paperwork that had to get filed and all the setbacks and all of that in order to eventually get the support and finances needed to dig up this freaking car park. Spoiler, she found him. Like the people that were working with her found King Richard III's body. Well, not his body because he's like been dead for a very long time, but they found his bones, his skeleton. And then they had like a new burial for him. And so he's buried in an identified place now. But I remember seeing that in the news when it happened. And it was like such a weird thing. I was like, they found a king and underneath a parking lot? Like what? And so now I read the book of the whole experience from her perspective of how that came about. And then what it was like when they found him and how everyone was crying. And it was like, it was a very nice book. I really, really enjoyed that one. Then I read a couple kids books or like younger age. So the same day, January 20th, I sat down and I read the second Christmas Witch book by Dan Murphy and Aubrey Plaza. So the first book was, I think, The Christmas Witch, and then the second book is The Return of the Christmas Witch. And I love these books. They're so weird. It's like very Aubrey Plaza. So it's basically about Santa and then his sister who is a witch. And in the first book, the witch is kind of like you're being introduced to her and she doesn't really have a relationship with Santa anymore and people fear her. And then in the second book, The Return of the Christmas Witch, you're continuing on with that story. It was super cute. Definitely love these books. We'll probably reread them around the holiday season now that I have both of them, but really enjoyed that one. Then the next day, January 21st, I sat and read a graphic novel. This one is Bad Dreams in the Night, Horror Stories by Adam Ellis, book number 1. And this one was just a lot of fun. I honestly don't remember anything about it at this point other than that I really enjoyed it at the time. It's on my shelf over there where I have all of my graphic novels, and the majority of my graphic novels are for middle grade or younger and spooky themed. So this one fit right into that and I did really enjoy it. Then February 6th is when I finished my next book, and it was another nonfiction from the library. This one is called Clean and Green, 101 Hints and Tips for a More Eco-Friendly Home by Nancy Birtwhistle. And Nancy was a contestant on one of the earlier seasons of Great British Bake Off, like when it was Mary Berry. And I remember her season and I loved her. And my husband even, like, we watched that when we lived in Maryland. He was like, oh, I remember her. Well, Nancy is now very popular on social media for being very eco-friendly and doing a lot of things around her house that are very, like, eco-friendly. And so I had heard about this book from Lauren in the Books, who had read it and got a bunch of great tips from it about how to use materials that you have, and then how to also create new cleaning materials through things that you can use in your house that are non-toxic and safe for animals and for the environment. So this one was pretty cool. I literally just read it on my Kindle at night. It was a very cozy book. It's obviously just like a list of all the different things that she uses, but then she also gives her experience of like trying stuff out, ruining clothes, trying something new. So I really enjoyed it. I don't know that anything from it necessarily stuck in my head as like, this is a product I'm going to use, but I did really enjoy it. So I read that one. It was a very cozy read. It was very, very comforting. Then I didn't finish another book. So I finished that one February 6th. I didn't finish another book until March 9th. So I definitely took a big break off of actively reading anything. March 9th, I finished another ebook, and this one is How Fascism Works, The Politics of Us and Them by Jason Stanley. This is a shorter book. It's only 240 pages about fascism throughout history, and it's basically like a manual for fascist governments, and he uses examples of different fascist governments throughout history to explain like this is the guidebook essentially that all fascist governments tend to use. They do the same things as the previous fascist regime. Like, you know, they use certain rhetoric, they ban certain books, they do certain things. And so I just wanted some more perspective because I had been seeing a lot of people referencing fascism with regard to the United States government and all of that, and I didn't really know what that meant. So I wanted to learn more. So I read this book, and it was very, very enlightening. Definitely enjoyed this nonfiction. It is a heavy read by very much a heavy read. So I would just like tell you that if you want to read it. I do recommend it, but yeah, it was not like a light read by any means. Then after that point, I was getting kind of burnt out with all of the nonfiction that I was consuming, because at that point I had started a lot of nonfiction books. I was reading a ton of journal articles. I spent days reading through many websites. The next book that I finished the Fascism book on March 9th. The next book that I finished was March 23rd. And this was the new short story from Alix E. Harrow. This one was The Knight and the Butcherbird, and I really enjoyed this one. But again, y'all, I don't remember anything from it. I would have to read the description to see if I get any of them back. I did enjoy that one though. I really like Alix E. Harrow's writing, so I was happy to read that one. Then after that, the final book that I finished for quarter one was another Alix E. Harrow. So March 29th, I finished Starling House, which was her newest book that came out in 2023. She, I believe, has another book coming out later this year, and I think I only have one or two of her books then to read. She's on my list of authors that I want to read all of their stuff. So I read Starling House, and Starling House is about a haunted house that there's this town that is very impoverished. There used to be like factories there, but all of that kind of fell apart, except for there's one company that still exists there that's like putting stuff in the water, and just lots of people are really sick. The main character is a teenager, like an older teenager, I believe, or maybe she's in her 20s, and she has a younger brother that she's taking care of because their mom died and they don't know who their dad is, and the younger brother has really bad asthma as a result of what this like horrific company has been doing in the town. And one day the main character is walking by Starling House, which is this big like haunted mansion that's part of the town that everyone says to stay away from, and she ends up encountering the person that is living in Starling House. And he comes up to the fence, like at the property line, and she starts talking to him. And then all of a sudden, like things get weird, and like the fence absorbs the blood from a cut on her hand. And then he gets all crazy, and he's like, "You have to run." And then she runs, and then it's like then afterwards a very kind of what you'd expect from like a haunted house that has all of these rumors, where she ends up meeting this guy and they have a lot more conversations, and he's not as spooky as everyone says, and there's more context behind everything. And I really enjoyed this book. I thought it was great. But those are all of the books that I read for quarter one. I have since finished 3 graphic novels and 2 novels. Well, one nonfiction and one fiction. And I am currently reading 12 other books that I'm hoping to wrap up by the end of this month so that I can mark off more from my April TBR. But not a terrible start for the first quarter of the year, considering I wasn't reading a ton. So I wanted to just like come on here and talk about that, wrap up the first quarter of the year. How many books did I buy in the first quarter of the year? We don't need to talk about that. So I will continue on my reading journey for the rest of the year. And like I said, as the year progresses, if my reading numbers start getting higher and it would end up being way too long to try to talk about all these books, then I will potentially start doing monthly wrap-ups. But for now, since it wasn't that many, I figured a quarter one wrap-up would be sufficient. I will try to remember to put the titles of the books down below in case you are interested. But let me know what you guys read in quarter one. Did you read any books that really stuck out for you? Are there any books you started in quarter one that you're going to finish in quarter two? I started a lot that I'm hoping to finish in quarter two. But yeah, let me know how your reading has been so far this year. And thank you so much for stopping by, and I will catch you in the next one. Bye.